Hi, my name is Nicholas Hansen. I am the original creator and project lead.
And I'm Jason Clift. I'm the producer and graphic designer. Today we're going to showcase a game we've created titled Survive.
It's the only board game out there that can be played both co-op and player versus the environment. It's also the only board game out there where the board changes every single time you play. And the fact that it would come in the same twice, the odds are astronomical, which also means that the strategy changes every single time you play the game. It's also the only game that can be played co-op where there can be a single solitary winner. It all started quite a while ago when I was working graveyard at a bar. A couple friends of mine came in one night when it was really slow, and we just started talking about, for some weird reason, like what it would be like if we were all survivors from a plane crash. Who would take up like a leadership position, who would be a follower, and what would we basically do to survive?
Today we're going to go over basic game rules and fundamentals.
So let's go ahead and dive right in with map creation. Creating a map is fairly simple. You start off by taking all the board tiles face down and shuffling up so they're in a random order. Player number 1 on his scorecard takes the first tile and sets it down anywhere on the table. Player 2 then grabs the second tile and places it to where at least one of the 18 sides is touching the adjacent space so that you can move from spot to spot. Once all of the tiles have been placed face down, you flip them face up. Now we're going to be moving on to placing your survivor tokens onto campfire spaces. The way to begin the game is placing your survivor tokens onto bonfire spaces. Now you remember those scorecards that you haphazardly threw around to your friends earlier? Maybe you should have paid a little closer attention to those. There's numbers on the bottom right hand corner that will go 1 through 6. Now the player with the number 1 scorecard gets to place all 5 of their survivor tokens first. And then player number 2 gets to place their survivor token second, and so on. This gives you the ultimate advantage of trying to get to your victory conditions first. But if you're the guy who got unlucky enough to draw number 6, don't worry, because you have the funnest advantage of all. You get the choice of either trying to play nice with everybody, or if you're the type of person that before the end of the game wants to hear you can go eat a dick, then you're in the right position because you can actually set yourself up to wall people off. Once everybody has set up their survivor tokens on their allotted bonfire spaces, then we can get the game started. Now you may have heard me mention victory conditions, and you may be asking yourself, well, what does that mean? Let me explain. There's 2 ways to win at Survive, and that is either by getting rescued by the oncoming plane, or to start a civilization. Now the way you get rescued by the plane is at the very beginning you pick either the wood tile parcels, the rock tile parcels, or the tech tile parcels. Now you have to collect all 3 of each one. Now it can either be wood, rock, or tech. You don't have to collect every single one. However, if at any time you collect 2 wood parcels and the third parcel gets destroyed in some way, you can always switch over to going to either rock or tech. You don't have to stick with one throughout the entire game. Now, if you wanted to go to the civilization route, civilization is actually way harder to win, but it's way easier to explain. Now, you have to have all 10 of your survivor tokens on the board at one time. You have to control 1 of each of the types of mines, wood, rock, and tech. And you have to have maximum of all the resources, which is 20. If at any point you're able to get all of those conditions, you start your civilization and you can win that way as well. Let's start things off simple. Look at your scorecards and set all of your resources, wood, rock, and tech to 5. Consider it a gift from me. You're welcome. Now player number 1 takes their first survivor token and moves it to an adjacent space to their bonfire. They then draw a card and do what the card says. Turn's over. Now, let's get to discussing what the different types of cards that you can draw are. Alright, moving on to the cards. There's 6 different types of cards that you find in Survive. First off, there's challenge cards. Challenge cards can be easy or hard. They are labeled 1 through 3. Now, depending on what number it is depending on what resource and how many you have to spend to complete the challenge. Like say, you get attacked by a bear, and you have to spend 3 wood to kill the bear with a loose leaf notebook or something like that. But, whatever. The great thing about it is the fact is that level 1s are fairly easy. 1 resource and you're fine. 2s suck because they take 2 of your resources and you don't get anything out of them. However, the level 3s are something that's so big that there was some random survivor walking around the island and he sees you kill the bear with the loose leaf notebook and he goes, man, that's the guy I need to hang out with because he knows how to handle himself. You then take an extra survivor token and put it on the space that you would just move to. We move on to gathers. Gathers are really, really simple. Draw gather 2 rock, you put 2 rock more on your scorecard, you move on. There's also gather survivor cards. Now gather survivor cards are 2 or 3. And what you do is if you gather 3 survivors, you draw a gather 3 survivors card, you put 3 survivors on the space that you would just move to. Let's move on to mine cards. Now when you draw a mine card, you put that specified mine token on the space that you would just move to. And say you do a tech mine 4. You immediately go up 4 tech. And then for every turn that you have control of that space with one of your survivor tokens, you get an extra tech. So every turn you go up 1 more. Danger cards. Danger cards are without a doubt my father's favorite one. Because they're the ultimate dick move. It's the way the game goes right at you. And what happens when you get a danger card drawn is you immediately lose all survivors that you have moved to that space, which is the advantage of only moving 1 at a time. If you move all your 5 of your survivors onto a space, you draw a danger card, you lose them all. But the really fun thing about the danger cards is the fact that it destroys the space you're moving to, so that nobody can get onto that space forevermore. And say it kills parcel space. You've collected 2 wood parcels and you're going for your 3rd and you draw the danger card on that 3rd parcel. You don't get to collect it, so you have to move on to either go to rock or tech. However, if someone else has already gathered that parcel, they can still move on to collect the other 2 because the other 2 are fine. Now, the last card is the victory card. Essentially, the game for anybody who's trying to get off the island, this is their done. Their ending point. Anybody who's collected all 3 parcels and gotten to the victory space can get off the island. Now here is where the challenge cards come into play, because he who has the best story once they've got off the island is the person who's going to end up on CNN. The guy who balanced his checkbook on the beach, you know, drinking a pina colada that he made up out of seawater and coconuts, isn't going to be very good. But the guy who killed the bear, cured dysentery, fixed a broken limb, built a raft, killed the piranhas, he's the guy that everybody's going to want to talk to. So you add up the points at which you have on the challenge cards. Now, a level 3 challenge is 3 points, a 2 challenge is 2 points, and a 1 challenge is 1 point. However, once the victory card is drawn, if not everybody has collected the parcels and got off the island, they still have the option of creating civilization, so they still can continue to play. Say the victory card's drawn on like the 3rd turn of the game, everybody can go for civilization. It makes it really, really simple. I think that's about it. Let's move on. No, I'm sorry. Once you've drawn the victory card, you go on to desperation rules. Now, say the 1 person or the 2 people who've got off the island don't have to worry about it, but anybody else who is stuck on the island has to worry about desperation. And we'll get into that.
Hi, I'm the cameraman, and I don't have a real name. But what I do have is the 7th card that Nick forgot, and those are disaster cards. Now, when a disaster card is drawn, it affects a certain tile type, be it rock, wood, or tech. Now, if you look at the spaces, you'll notice little numbers. Now that's the amount you have to pay of that specific resource to keep those tokens. So if I've got a survivor token on a tech space and the cost is 3 and a tech disaster happens, I have to pay 3 tech to keep him. I lose anything I can't afford. Well, let's go back to whatever Nick was talking about.
Moving on to desperation. There's 2 ways to acquire desperation points. 1, the victory card is drawn. Anybody who hasn't escaped the island at that point suffers a point of desperation. The other way to gather desperation points is by having a player's tokens completely lost. Now, for every point of desperation that you mark on the bottom of your scorecard is how many extra cards you have to draw every single time you move. Say you only have 1 point of desperation because only the victory card's been drawn, you draw 2 cards every turn. But if 3 players have been wiped out, and the victory card's been drawn, you then have to draw 5 cards every turn. And let's just say you don't last very long. Now this is the reason why you like to ally yourself with other players. Now by allying yourself with another player, you can move across their pieces as though they were your own, so it allows you to travel across the island much faster. So getting yourself allied with 2 or 3 other players allows you to get to your parcels in the victory space much faster, and you live longer. Now don't get me wrong, Survive is a really fun game. But just when you think that all cards are up and everything's going your way and nothing bad's going to happen, I got a little bit of a short story for you. My father, my wife, sister, and her fiance and her best friend were all playing. And everything was going fine, and it was mostly their first time playing, and everyone was like, oh yeah, this is great, you know, this isn't what we were promised, but it's happening anyway. Well, then my father drew the Perfect Storm card, which is the disaster that affects the entire island, and it wipes him out. Desperation starts. The very next turn, my sister moved, had to draw 2 cards, drew 2 extra disasters. She got wiped out, and most of the other players lost most of their resources. Then, within 1.5 turns of everybody going, all 3 of the other players were wiped out. So within 2 full rounds of the board, 5 players bit the dust. So just when you think you're safe, think again, because it can all go really bad for you. Ah! Seriously, dude, what the hell?
What?
Where have you been?
Video transition.
What am I supposed to do, blame him?
Yeah, that's why I'm not here.
Alright. You want to wrap this thing up?
Nah, you've done so much, you can do it.
Thanks. And thank you for taking the time to watch our showcase on a game which we have spent countless hours creating and refining. We are so excited to show off this game because of all the hard work and dedication we put into it.
Thank you and good night.
Really? That's your contribution to the ending?
That's a wrap!